My name is Maria Cotera. I'm the panel moderator. I'm a Partnerships Development Manager for Fixair. And this is getting hot in here, information professionals contributing to open science towards climate empowerment. This is a meeting of the IFLA Evidence for Global and Disaster Health Special Interest Group. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the group. The group was founded in 2017. Our mission is to work to promote and strengthen the roles that librarians play in times of disaster and in response to global health challenges. With me today are our previous convener that just finished now, Emma Farrow, the new convener, Margaret Suleiman, and I am the events lead for the group. I'm finishing after this event. So the premise for the webinar is to address the increasingly urgent need to tackle the complex and interconnected climate challenges that we face. These include disasters, water shortages, lack of safe drinking water, food crisis, starvation even. So we know that to address these disasters and accelerate global progress, science needs to be disseminated beyond borders and paywalls. The global need for clean energy and climate-resistant sustainable development bring into focus the need to embrace open science. So this is what we're going to discuss today. Our first three panelists are going to speak for about 15 minutes each, and they represent the global voice of libraries, the voice of from the global south, and the presentation will be about libraries embracing open science for development. Second, we will have the voice of IFLA. How can libraries accelerate climate empowerment is the theme of that. And then thirdly, we will have a researcher's perspective. From data to action, harnessing the potential of open data and open source intelligence for environmental management. So I will introduce the presenters, and after that, we will get to hear the presentations of the three presenters. Then we will have a short comfort break, and we will then get on into the third part, which is shorter presentations and the panel discussion, and we will welcome your questions. So our first presenter is Ms. Ellen Tice. Ellen is the Senior Director of Library and Information Services at Stellenbosch University, South Africa. She's been there since January 2006. She served as the first president of the Library and Information Association of South Africa, LIASA, and then as president of IFLA from 2009 to 2011. She's just finished her term as chair of the IFLA Freedom of Access to Information and Freedom of Expression Advisory Committee, second term. And she also serves as chair of the board for the National Library of South Africa and the OCLC Board of Trustees. So she's had many, many roles, but what I really wanted to emphasize is that Ms. Tice is a past president of IFLA and an IFLA honorary fellow, and we are very grateful for her presence here today. The second presenter comes from IFLA headquarters, is Claire Maguire. Claire is an officer on the policy and advocacy team at the International Federation of Library Associations. She focuses her work on culture, heritage, education, communications and information, and climate policy. She works to amplify the perspective and impact of the global library field and advocate for a supportive environment for libraries in which they can realize their potential. And the third presenter in this first part of the webinar is Jan Cerny. Dr. Cerny is a researcher with a doctoral degree in applied informatics and a master's degree in information science and librarianship. So he's also a librarian as well as a researcher. His research interests are centered around the intersection of librarianship and intelligence studies. Jan is a passionate advocate for libraries and actively explores new opportunities for them in the realm of education. He's particularly interested on how libraries can utilize open data to inform decision making. And there we go. We are going to go with the first presenter, Libraries Embracing Open Science for Development, Ms. Ellen Dice, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this meeting this morning. I have to say it is a bit of a challenge after a whole week of the World Library and Information Congress, but we are committed and we're here this morning. So I'm the first speaker, and I'm very pleased to be the first speaker because I'm really just going to give set the scene by giving an overview. And I was very pleased to note that I don't have to go into each of the specific areas that covers the topic this morning, because all the other panelists will go into the details about each of them. So I will just touch on it to explain and just give an overview of it, and then I'll leave it to the rest of the panelists. So I have been doing it a little bit broader than just from the Global South, but I will give here and there specific examples from the Global South and then specifically from South Africa. So as we all know, and one of the reasons this group exists in IFLA, and why there is such a focus around the world is that because climate change is considered an existential threat to humans, it has become a critical issue, and that's why the United Nations had added climate action as one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And SDG 13 calls on all of us as the human species to collectively, I quote, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. This SDG has 5 targets. 13.1, strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards. 13.2, integrate climate change measures into policies and planning. 3, build knowledge and capacity to meet climate change. 4, implement the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And 5, promote mechanisms to raise capacity for planning and management. The threat to humans because of climate change inaction is multidimensional. The European Commission in 2023 categorized these into 4 threats. Those are 1, natural consequences. These includes, and we've already heard from Maria, droughts, wildfires, floods, lack of fresh water, negative impacts on biodiversity. 2, social threats. These include negative impacts on human health and the proliferation of new diseases, higher than normal instances of displacement and migration. We experience it every day. We read about it in the news. And negative impact on agriculture and tourism. Again, the last year, we have experienced it in a major ways. Threats 3, threats to business, especially in energy, infrastructure and buildings, agriculture and forestry, insurance and tourism sectors. 4, territorial threats, including the Arctic and many parts of the world, and urban and mountainous areas. The EU Commission goes on to identify 3 major causes of climate change, which are burning fossil fuels, cutting down forests, and farming livestock. The United Nations put the figure of greenhouse gas emissions as a result of deforestation to roughly a quarter, 10% of worldwide emissions. According to Statistica, 8 billion trees are cut every year for paper, of which 32% is for printing, writing, and newsprints. Another author calls climate change a collective action problem requiring multifaceted and multidisciplinary approaches. And of course, today we want to see here how libraries can play in that. And therefore, As libraries, we cannot allow ourselves to be hamstrung into mere referees in the climate action debates. IFLA has committed all libraries to climate action through advancing the SDG on climate action, reduction of carbon emissions produced by the work of libraries, implementing green approaches, advocating for climate change, and collaborating with others to champion for climate issues. Libraries can demonstrate their climate consciousness through support for open science, empowering communities on and about the effects of climate change, as well as support and provide tools for climate resilience. Now, as I said, all the speakers after me will speak on each of these topics, but I want to say how does this relate to open science, climate resilience, and empowerment. Open science, climate resilience, and empowerment are actually three interconnected concepts that have a potential to play a crucial role in addressing the challenges posed by climate change and ensuring a sustainable future for our planet. And of course, according to UNESCO, but I think I think we all probably do know the definition for open science, so I'll skip that. On the other hand, climate resilience, and again, speaker will speak about that later, is about successfully coping with and managing the impacts of climate change while preventing those impacts from growing worse. It is about finding coping strategies and mechanisms to deal with the current effects of climate change while finding ways to reverse those effects that are reversible. And in order then for communities to be climate change resilient, there needs to be some sort of climate empowerment. Heyer defines climate empowerment as the tools that help communities to take positive steps to respond to, recover from, and adapt to climate change. Again, I'm not going to go into the detail, and I'll just provide the areas that will be discussed. So how can libraries empower communities, contribute to develop research, empower also not just the librarians, but again, the communities and our users and researchers. And that, as I said, people basically can do that through open science. So there are a number of open science initiatives, as we know, at universities, national libraries, research institutions. Those include institutional repositories, open educational resources, open data repositories, open access textbooks, and open access publishing. And briefly, institutional repositories, how much time do I have?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay.
Almost 10 minutes, yeah.
Okay. So institutional repositories, and there, of course, libraries provide infrastructure in the form of institutional repositories to advocate for and promote OA. Open data repositories, again, many libraries now all over the world also have developed and have open repositories, data repositories. Again, we will hear about that later. But I just want to give an example of an open data repository, for example, in South Africa, where the National Research Foundation, which is of South Africa, the primary funder of research in the country, mandates that all research output published using public funds must be published in open access publications and also deposit in open data repositories. The data used to generate those output must also be deposited in these data repositories. And to respond to this mandate, basically all research intensive universities in South Africa now also host data repositories. And Maria would probably be very happy with me to say, in most cases, they are powered by Figshare that we use as our for the hosting of our data repositories in South Africa. Again, we know it is an archival space that is used to then store researchers' data sets associated with their research. In the case of South Africa, for example, we have the South African Environmental Observation Network. This is now separate from the university's repositories. And then also the open data platform. And it's basically a metadata repository that facilitates the publication, discovery, dissemination, and preservation of Earth observation and environmental data in South Africa. In addition to this, the National Research Foundation of South Africa also works closely with South African Environmental Observation Network to archive data on environment and climate change. Then the other areas, of course, in terms of open educational resources, how can we also promote information on climate change? Libraries curate and collect OER such as open textbooks, digital learning objects, learning modules. These, of course, came in very handy during COVID-19 due to the inaccessibility of print formats. And I think we should build on that. It's interesting to see how quickly we want to go back to how we operated before COVID. Then, of course, there's open access publishing. We're all aware of these read and publish agreements that in many countries have now adopted, where we want to completely change the scholarly. So if we want to make change empower people, then of course it means that the research that are being conducted should be accessible and available so that researchers can use that to address some of our problems. And that's why we need to completely change the scholarly publishing landscape, and why many institutions are involved in that. So libraries, of course, are not only consumers of information, but we are also in many cases publishers. Again, in the case, for example, Stellenbosch University, we have, for example, established a repository where we host a service that hosts open access electronic journals associated with Stellenbosch University. The platform hosts 25 academic journals, of which 21 are active. And the service entails setting up journals, hosting content, exploring workflows, and providing technical support. And this is very, very important for us, especially in the global south. As all of these areas in the, I would say in the global north, developed countries, they have established some of these resources and these repositories over a period of time. And of course, because their research output is, of course, a lot more than what we publish in the global south. So it is critical because we do not just want to be seen as using information. So it's not just that we want to access what is published in the global north or the data that's produced in the global north, but that we, because of course we also contribute, and we want the research that we're doing also to be available to address problems in the north and in the south. And that's why it's important for libraries and information professionals in the global south then also to develop these repositories to provide the infrastructure for open science and to maintain that. So in order for us then to be resilient, to empower librarians as well, we need to make sure that we support and grow open access, open science in our various institutions. But what is important, and for me is what I had alluded to earlier on, is that when we look at this, that we don't create the same kind of systems that we've had in the past. And it's about participation, that there must be the principles of global inclusion and equity should be at the core of open science, because we're not going to make any difference if some parts of the world make a lot of progress and then the rest of the world still need to catch up, because climate change is going to affect us everywhere. And therefore we need to work together on those. So it's really about countries developing open science policies. I'm actually done. It's about developing open science policies on how we can help and where and the place and the role that libraries can play in that, and to accelerate that all over the world. And that's the way that I think we would be able to address some of our climate challenges that we're facing in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ellen. There is there is a lot of clapping in this room, although there is only the panelists in the room, but it's good that you are supporting each other. So please bear in mind that we are going to have the questions right at the end. In the meantime, I want you to please use the Q&A function, not the chat, the Q&A function, to collect your questions. So if you have questions for any of the panelists or comments, please put them on the Q&A chat. Now we have our second speaker. She's going to speak about libraries accelerating climate empowerment. She's representing the voice of IFLA. Claire Maguire, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you to the Special Interest Group for inviting me here today. I'm really delighted to join you in exploring this really important angle of climate empowerment. And yes, as you said, I'm Claire Maguire. I work at IFLA headquarters on the policy and advocacy team. Part of my work is to elevate and amplify library perspectives at the international level, where IFLA as an international non-governmental organization has a seat at the table, perhaps in places where individual associations or institutions may not. So a goal of mine as I interact in policy and advocacy is to ensure that all of this work that's being done at the institution level, at university level, at the national level is being talked about and integrated into these larger discussions on global challenges. And as we've pointed out, one of the most dire global challenges is, of course, the climate crisis. So today, I'm happy to add a bit of context to this discussion from IFLA's policy and advocacy work, and especially our work exploring the question, how can libraries accelerate climate empowerment? So in the next few minutes, I will introduce the Action for Climate Empowerment, ACE, as it is understood in international climate policy. I will touch on why ACE matters for libraries, and in that, encourage some strategic thinking where we look at how we connect the work that libraries are doing to the larger framework around implementing ACE. And in that, I will bring some highlights from the World Library and Information Congress that we've just finished, where we were also discussing this topic more broadly, but I think there's some very interesting outputs that are very much aligned with the topic of today's talk. And I'll end with a look at a project IFLA is taking on to integrate the perspective of libraries on this topic, and there's a call to action there. So hopefully you will consider being more involved. So Action for Climate Empowerment, ACE. This is a topic that in my work I've been trying to integrate and trying to raise awareness of in the library field, because we're so often working on topics that are very much related to global development goals, but we're perhaps not using the same language that policymakers are using. And then there's a disconnect between what we're doing and opportunities to highlight what we're doing outside of the sector. So my goal in engaging in Action for Climate Empowerment is twofold. One is looking back towards the library sector, towards library professionals, and saying, here is a framework where I believe libraries fit very well. So being aware that this exists and using this language is a first step to saying, okay, libraries are very important stakeholders in this work. And on the second side, I'm looking outward to the larger policy sphere of people that are working on these topics from an intergovernmental position or from a national government position, and saying, you've already made commitments to upholding and implementing these initiatives, and here is a ready-made solution that within the library sector that maybe you have not considered. So Action for Climate Empowerment has 6 elements. You see them on the screen: education, public awareness, training, public access to information, public participation, and international cooperation. And I don't think I have to go into an extreme amount of detail on what the role that libraries can and do have in all of these areas. I think libraries are very natural partners in a lot of these areas, and that is libraries of all types, because that element of education throughout life, be it in partnership with the formal education sector, be it in higher education and research, is very much in the DNA of libraries, as is championing access to information, public participation, public awareness, and of course at IFLA, international cooperation. I think enough said. We're all here from around the world, and libraries can and will continue to open up possibilities for international exchange. And I think it's important to look at ACE, because this has been integrated from the very highest levels in international policy on climate as being a not only important but critical part of addressing the climate emergency. Being able to change minds, being able to be solution-oriented and creative in our thinking and inclusive in our thinking is very important. Science and technology advancement alone won't solve the climate crisis. We need all people to be engaging at many different levels and also have the tools to understand these very complex concepts where there is so much misinformation, there is so much disinformation, and it can feel very overwhelming of what can I do. So ACE is really looking at targeting all members of society. And I wanted to note that, again, this is integrated in the policy framework. ACE is an aspect both of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the Paris Agreement, which are the 2 international agreements on climate action and on addressing the climate crisis. And I note that because these are both conventions, agreements, and member states who have signed and ratified these agreements have an obligation to uphold them. So this isn't a nice to have, there is an obligation. So I think knowing that opens up some opportunities for us in the library sector to advocate for our work, both to implement more work within our institutions, get that support to do so, but also to reach out to policymakers at multiple levels and say, we know that there is an obligation to support these important elements of climate action, and here's how we can help. So I'm sort of now touched on this. I know international policy can seem like it's something that is just up and beyond. It's something that policymakers are working on. It's not something that touches us here in our institutions. But I think it's important to know what's out there, to be able to speak, to be able to put our work into a larger context where in the terms of this conversation, these initiatives on open science, on citizen science, on open education resources, they are not existing in a vacuum. They're indeed a part of a larger framework. And again, being able to speak to that, and it can both help you think up new programs that could be really relevant and really helpful, but also to advocate for, again, the critical and ongoing role of libraries as we as the function of libraries adapts to different contexts, to modern contexts, and to showing this enduring value, I think, is quite important. So we at IFLA have been doing a lot of awareness raising work within our membership on the elements of ACE, also from a very basic level, right? Because any libraries, small public libraries, community libraries can implement programs like this, but it also opens up lots of opportunity for discussion, for exchange, and we would love to see all of these different initiatives being included in this broad, large, and varied framework, where we can have a very strong statement where we say, look at this colorful, exciting work being done across the library sector in all its different forms to uphold this critical part of climate action. So I want to touch a little bit on strategic thinking in that sense, because again, it's helpful for advocacy, but it's also helpful to imagine how can we take our initiatives a step further. So the current, at the UN Climate Convention in 2022 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, a new action plan, a very time-based and output-oriented action plan for climate empowerment was put into force. And there are 4 priorities within that action plan. And it might be interesting to connect the work that we're doing to at least one of these strategies, again, to integrate it into the larger framework. So the first is policy coherence. And that means national plans and strategies and actions are put in place to realize ACE. So the participation of libraries in this work, be it at the national or the subnational level, can help ensure that all members of society are included. So here is an example in the image from La Médiathèque. Sorry, my French is. This is embarrassing, but it's a library. I wasn't prepared to try to speak French this morning. A library in Paris, France, who's been involved in multidisciplinary working groups and multi-stakeholder working groups on implementing the Paris Agreement. The second is coordinated action. So participation in local networks with many different stakeholders, many different practitioners. So libraries can reach out beyond the sector and be platforms to connect with different people working in this space. So this example is from Hangshu Public Library Environment Branch, where they have been coordinating with different stakeholders in the city on environmental protection. The next is tools and support. Libraries, and I think from the science sector, we can look at lots of opportunities to enhance tools for climate education and for research, for understanding the research. So this example from the National Library of Scotland has geo-referenced historic maps with current maps, where we can see with a scanner the way the shoreline erodes, and makes documentary heritage now become climate research. And finally is monitoring, evaluating, and reporting. How are we telling our stories? How are we building an evidence base of our impact? So IFLA's Green Library Award is an example, but I'm sure in all the work that we're doing, this should be an important element. So to look at what we've done just very recently within the last days, I think it's very important that we reach out beyond libraries, because it's funny when I'm having conversations with policymakers who are working on ACE, they say to me, I never thought of libraries in this at all. I didn't know libraries were doing this work. So, and then we keep talking and they say, we've missed a huge opportunity by not considering libraries. So we had a wonderful conversation at the conference here in Rotterdam, where we invited the ACE focal point for the Netherlands. So this is the person from the ministry responsible for coordinating ACE action nationally in the Netherlands and then acting internationally at the UNFCCC. We invited her, and we invited the UN or the Netherlands youth representative for the SDGs to join us in Rotterdam to have a conversation where we included our audience in brainstorming ideas of how we can use libraries to target priorities. So the youth representative, she spoke about the youth work at COP27 and said one of the priorities that youth has identified as a main challenge is air pollution, air quality, and the negative effects it can have on health. And this is a really complex issue, and people might find it very hard to engage. So we got all these ideas. We used we got all these ideas for different ways to different things libraries can do. IFLA will be publishing a report, so keep a lookout for that. Then we looked at all of these different stakeholders that we should build relationships with, from policymakers to researchers and beyond. And then we looked at ways that we can measure our impact and make it known. So I will end with this survey that IFLA is doing. We're working to integrate a non-formal education indicator in a project on climate communication and education indicators. At the moment, only formal education is being included, but we are very keen to include a library perspective so we can advocate more effectively to policymakers. So I encourage you to get involved by answering this survey, telling about what you're doing, and helping us integrate a library perspective. So with that, dankjewel, thank you very much. And I'm happy to hear a little bit more on the open science aspect of this work from the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. Okay, we are moving on to the third speaker within the first hour. After this speaker, we will have a little break, just a comfort break, and then we will start again on the hour. But the last presentation now is a researcher's perspective. The title of the presentation is, okay, you can say it yourself because it's already on the screen. Yeah, please start.
So thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jan Černý. I come from Prague University of Economics and Business, Department of Information Technology. Firstly, thank you, Maria and Fischer, for inviting me here, and giving me opportunity to present this topic. I think really important topic, because I would like to present the context of open data and open source intelligence in the context of some environmental issues. And I would like to speak about these topics and to have a discussion with you how libraries and librarians can promote the importance of open data and open source intelligence. What I would like to say that all what I will be mentioning coming from all the layers of the online environment today, so from the surface web, through deep web, through dark web, which I have one slide, and I will have a couple of comments regarding dark web and how dark web could be really harmful for our environmental, let's say, for our environments today. But let's start with the open data, because for me, open data is about democratizing information. And by definition, it should be accessible, it should be transparent, without any license around, and free from any discrimination. And moreover, one technical requirement, at least it should be in machine-readable format. I would say also well-structured, but this is not the rule, unfortunately. But we'll be working on this so that the open data set will be more and more well-structured. But sometimes you will need something more than open data. So you need data quickly. You need data from tough fields, and so I'm mentioning here the key players, key data marketplaces that you can use, and you can find their data verified, validated, up to date, and you can have those data sets immediately. And by the way, this is the huge trend regarding the business environment. And I believe that you know Snowflake, for example, DataRate. It's really cool projects, platforms. But a couple of examples what you can do with open data today. So I'd like to mention a couple of really interesting projects. And the first I would like to start that we all know that our oceans are choked with the plastic waste. And if you just look at the number provided by Mandaru Foundation, more than 10 million tons of plastic waste are dumped in our oceans annually. It's a horrific number, by the way. But the foundation have partnered with the Earthrise Media, and they have created together. They have created really interesting platform, Global Plastic Watch. It's a tool, it's an online tool. You can use it immediately, and you can see the most vulnerable places across our planet that are flooded by plastic waste. And by the way, the project is used today by many governments, for example, for issuing anti-dumping laws. Or you can use it to uncover the illegal dumps, for example. So this is the example of the map, how you can use it to visualize the polluted places across the globe. More projects. Marine debris program, it's similar, but it's based on also volunteers across the globe, and they document the plastic waste on coastlines across the globe. But really interesting are two more projects, because they are based on computer vision model. And I would like to stress on underwater waste detection, and you can just download it on GitHub and use it, because this project is based on open data using high-speed computer vision model, version 8, and it's used for detection and classification and segmentation of plastic waste underwater. So you can use it can be used by many governments to identify the problematic water locations, underwater locations. All of the projects could be reached immediately. Then I borrowed the title of this satellite conference, and I asked, is it really hot here? And to be able to answer immediately, because you can do it in a couple of minutes. So I use global temperature time series dataset. This dataset covers period from 1880 to present, and you can visualize the temperature. And so I did the land temperature anomalies diagram with ocean temperature anomalies over the time diagram, and there is also some correlation. So yeah, that's the trend, and we know about this problem that's caused by many reasons. So it's from burning of fossil fuels, of course, to natural factor effects. And we know about this reason. So it led me to an idea, how about to build a global early warning system? Because 2 years ago, my colleague Martin Botanchuk and I partnered with UC Berkeley, and we proposed the model of early warning system in post-COVID era to detect possible another pandemic that could appear using open data from the surface web, deep web, and dark web, and be able to monitor all the information signals coming to us and uncover possible trends. And now I had an idea how to create an alert system for all of us in one specific application that could be accessible by nearly anybody. Because as you can see, we have a lot of data. We can monitor burning of fossil fuels. We can monitor the agriculture effects on our environment, and we can also monitor the technology effects on our planet using, for example, using Shodan search engine that's indexing all internet-connected devices across the globe. And how about to create the app that people can use to monitor what's happening to the planet, so some global view, but also it can be used on a local perspective. Because how about that you can just warn about the illegal dump in your neighborhood and send immediately the picture to your local authorities to solve the problem immediately, to clean it, but to start an investigation who did this, who committed this crime. So, a couple of open data sets that we can use, we can immediately have data for this application. Immediately. It's a couple of them, but it's not the end. It's not the end because we don't need more data. We don't need more data. I think there's a lot of data across the globe. So I especially like what UN does with data, and I especially love the project Kaggle. So that's a couple of references if you are interested in open data. But I think what we need, and I think this is the role for libraries and librarians across the globe, from local municipal librarians, libraries to university libraries, to, of course, IFLA officers, because we need to have more educated and literate data analysts. And we feel the increasing demand for this profession. Of course, that we need to support critical thinking, and that's, of course, I need to mention that I'm responsible for one of the municipal libraries in the Czech Republic, and I know how important is reading literacy. Because we need to support reading literacy, because it's a foundation for the critical thinking, because technology won't save us, unfortunately. They can help us, but they do not save us. And then, of course, new communication channels, and I do not mean Facebook. I think in the new ways how we can communicate the critical issues to our patrons. And of course, quick absorption of technology, trends today, and better decision-making process. In fact, quicker and better decision-making process. And now, they start to be really interesting, because OSINT, or open source intelligence, is something that could help to solve many, many serious issues across the globe. And open source intelligence refers to the process, or it's a life cycle of planning or defining key intelligence question at the beginning, collecting data and information, analyzing them, processing them, and transforming them into intelligence that could be used by decision makers. And we are working not only with the open data, but we transform open data into open information that should be and must be, after that, validated to become open source intelligence. And how we can use OSINT in the context of environmental issues? Yeah, we can investigate wildlife crimes. That's, I think, something powerful that must be mentioned, how OSINT could help, specifically in countries where the wildlife animals are living. Also, you can uncover structure of multinational corporations. You can use satellite data. Remember the Global Plastic Watch? But you can use satellite data for monitoring the movements of vehicles. Not only Russian tanks, by the way, but you can use it for monitoring vehicles that are used for illegal hunting or illegal logging or mining activities, illegal mining activities. And also you can monitor vessels to uncover or investigate illegal fishing. And of course, public engagement, it's number one, it's marketing. At the end, it's always about marketing, by the way. So a couple of examples. You can monitor the density of vessels. It's an example from EU, coastlines, rivers, and so on. By the way, this is the project of the university from Netherlands. Shandong University. It's quite a new project because I think the cybersecurity is number one issue also in the context of environmental activities, because I think the black hats could harm us, not only our computers, but it can be used, the cyber attacks could be used to harm our environment and nature. And of course, you can use it to identify the locations that could face in the near future to this serious problem, because still it's our planet, yes. And the last last slide, I would like to mention dark web, because dark web is mainly environment that you can't access through your Firefox on Chrome and so on browsers. You must use Tor browser to access the dark web. And I would like to mention that I do research in dark web indexing process. So how the data and information are being indexed in dark web. But I also would like to mention this incredible, interesting study let's say it's about a data set captured from dark web marketplaces. And this is the first signs that dark web will be used for criminal trades regarding the wildlife in the near future. So I believe that's really important to mention it. It's dark web. It's really increasing the importance. Europol issued the report that still is 70% about the drug sales, dark web. But this study confirmed that it can be used for many other criminal activities in the context of environmental aspects. Yes. So thank you very much for your attention. You can contact me. I would be really happy to cooperate. And Maria, again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This was fascinating. I think I've heard this another version of this presentation about a year ago, and I thought, do we librarians know about all this stuff? that researchers are doing in the field, I thought it was worth inviting Jan, and thank you very much for coming all the way from your university, especially for this. We're going to have a little comfort break now. We are going to present the next round of speakers. The first speaker that is going to speak for just 5 minutes is Maria Reni Solomon. So Reni is a research data librarian at the National Agency for Research and Innovation in the Republic of Indonesia. She's particularly interested in how research data management can support open science in the research and innovation ecosystem. She manages the National Scientific Repository in Indonesia and has extensive experience providing research support for various research projects. And she's also one of the 22 International Fellows for Emerging International Voices, which is a joint program between IFLA and the Goethe Institute for Young Information Professionals. Over to you, please.
Well, thank you, Maria. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, for who joining online. First of all, thank you, Maria, and the Special Interest Group for inviting me to share my experiences. Again, my name is Madia Rini Sulaiman, and I'm a research data librarian in BRIN Indonesia, a national research institution, and I also currently a PhD student at University College London. I would like to share how my team and I as librarians has influenced RDM culture, including policy in Indonesia. For a short background, I have a very linear education in library and information science, and I have worked as librarian for 9 years, but specifically managed the research data for the past 5 to 6 years. And also there are previous and current engagement that my team and I have done in Indonesia and internationally regarding supporting RDM culture for our researchers and academicians, more in the form of action like being advocates, involvement in designing regulations, policy, and also networking. First, I would like to highlight the work of our librarian in advocating RDM and open science in Indonesia. For instance, related to our theme today for climate empowerment. My patrons are mostly researchers from various disciplines, and in this case, we want to build data management capacity for our oceanographic researchers or general researchers who use satellites, sensors, or time series data about Indonesian climate, volcanoes, earthquakes, etc. that are, of course, big data, a very big data that I will also want to echo Jan about his open data movement. And also that way we want to give training and increase awareness of the importance of RDM and open science. As you know, Indonesia is an archipelago country, and sadly we found that no ocean repository yet produced and managed by Indonesia itself. It could be in silos or internationally managed or maybe closed access. So we try to be proactive in the dialogue, being involved in Research Data Alliance, for instance, and also I was supported by Australian Awards on Open Data Government. We managed to work together designing best practices and approaches in terms of data literacy for researchers through various activities, including podcasts. And another involvement was me being one of the 22 fellows of Emerging International Voices, a joint project between Goethe Institute and IFLA since 2020. Each fellow has their own role and contribution for their country in regards being information professionals. The project includes various outputs like articles, programs, videos, which if I can highlight during pandemic, we also try to underline the topic of infodemic to global audiences. It is a challenging issue when the pandemic hits, and we also work remotely from our own country, and it was nice a very nice experience. The different time zone or distance does not limit us working together. I was also being involved in representing Indonesia as member state in developing UNESCO recommendation on open science. We then delivered and also tailored all highlighted recommendation to our national RDM policies in Indonesia. Even though not fully open, the regulation acts as a data deposit mandatory to support fair principles. Lastly, my future involvement will be in the Forum for Asia or Oceania data stakeholders that will be held in Tokyo this December. I will come as one of the delegates to represent Indonesia in making sure that our work on research data and openness can be in line with the forum visions, and the output to be hub in designing more interactive training and workshop for our researchers regarding data literacy. With this, we could conclude that librarians as information professionals can have roles of being advocates and mediator, bridging the gaps, especially in terms of emerging roles on research data management, and subject specialist is especially needed. It is a hope that it can also result to a domino effect in empowering climate awareness to our patrons to have a more evidence and data-based policy in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Renny. That was brilliant, a brilliant example of how librarians contribute to data policy, contribute to actually the decision-making process on how data and open science are used. And congratulations on all your achievements, and especially in being on the UNESCO Open Science Recommendation Working Groups representing your country. I think you should be very proud of that. So our next speaker is going to talk about citizen science. She's Anja Petersen, and I haven't pronounced that correctly. I'm going to try it again. Anja Petersen. I have been practicing, but it's difficult for me. She comes from Denmark, again, especially for this event. So I'm very excited to hear what she has to tell us. Anja is a graduate of the Royal School of Library and Information Science in Denmark, and she's got also a certification in digital communication. She joins the University Library of Southern Denmark as a librarian in 2006, and shortly afterwards she joined the Citizen Science Knowledge Center, where she's been working. Her primary functions are there, but she is also active in the board of the Trade Union of Librarians and Culture Workers in Denmark. She's a keen builder of bridges between information and knowledge and the public, and we're going to hear a bit more about that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Maria. And you said my name just perfectly. So I'll just watch over there.
Yeah, the presentation is coming on the screen in a second. Yes. Thank you. Here we are.
And thank you. So I want to talk about how we at the University Library in Denmark use citizen science as a tool as a librarians to work with the climate. And you heard a lot about me. Now, my working premise is such: the societal context in which libraries operate is changing rapidly. And as librarians struggle to keep pace, we are incorporating citizen science practices. However, measuring engagement by quantifying contribution to data outputs alone leaves critical gaps in the full range of what engagement means and entrails. In contrast, co-created citizen science projects may entrail the greatest transformative potential and have the widest range of impact on public understanding. Most of all, citizen science actually gives potential to democratize science and surrounding society. The Citizen Science Center at University of Southern Denmark is based in the library, but is not owned by the library. It lives in the library because the librarians are trustworthy. Now, this might be the most important slide of all that I'm saying. that the focus is actually the reciprocal angle, as it has a huge effect on democratizing impact value. Citizen science is not about creating free data to the scientist. It is bottom-up driven initiative driven by co-created and collegial processes. By the way, did you know that the European Commission actually back in 2014 called citizen science societize? There's a really nice white paper that you can read there. And did you also know that the United Nations has described citizen science as a potential to work really good with the sustainability goals? There's a really good article in Nature about this, of citizen science impact. Now, why should librarians do citizen science? Well, it's basically in our DNA. Public libraries face a paradigm shift in their community role. It's a digital revolution, and we can really help there. I could talk a lot about this. And we made a little clever comic about this. It's about how dialogue and collaboration does not come by themselves. I'm very fascinated by Josep Perello. He's a professor in Barcelona, and he said, if librarians can lend out books, now why can we also lend out projects? So what we have done at our university, we have facilitated the Globe at Night. So we did that by doing small road shows to tiny libraries, of course for free. You can see my very lovely student assistant, Oliver, in the background, talking to a lot of kids and youngsters. And we lend out stars equipments. Now, in the next slide, you can see how we ask a lot of youth to write to our climate future fiction. It is a lot of in-house activity at the university. We also made an app how to find local little lakes to put in water samples for our scientists. We have made a lot of projects about history. We asked a lot of young people to go out and ask their grandparents, or even if their grandparents are alive, how was your youth? We have done a lot of projects. I won't talk about them all. Now, the next one we're going to facilitate is Seek. It's very nice. So, and this was my 4 minutes. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was really fascinating and up to time. And I have to say, all the presentations will be available on the satellite website from next week. So there is also a lot of links there. You can click and watch the videos, not just from this presentation, but all of them. So our last panelist that is going to do a short presentation is Nienke de Groot. She hasn't traveled very far because she comes here every day, but we are very excited to have somebody representing Erasmus University Rotterdam, as they are our hosts and they've been magnificent throughout the whole Congress. So Nienke is a data manager, is a research data management specialist and manager of the institutional data repository at the Erasmus University Rotterdam. Together with a multidisciplinary team, she works on fostering data publication practices among the researchers in the university, creating and maintaining a data curation service and making research data possible. Over to you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that lovely introduction and pronouncing my name properly. So that's always a big plus. So I was very, very happy to be invited to speak here today, but I thought, oh, well, I'm just a simple data manager. I don't have a specific role for climate resilience. So, and our university is mainly known for economics and management. So what this is it on? Is it a button? A button. Screen. Yeah, it is green. I think it's a wheel.
It's on.
Let's start again. I shall start again. So my 5 minutes will start again as well. All right, so again, thank you for your wonderful invitation. And I thought it was really nice, but I thought, oh, but I'm just a simple data manager. And I don't have a specific role or goal towards climate resilience. So this is interesting. And our university is mainly known for its economics and management sciences. So that's quite interesting. So I was just browsing the internet because, of course, climate is everywhere. And I forgot to push the button here. And I thought, oh, great, positive trends. As economics, we love positive trends. Although I guess if you look a bit closer in this case, I would say that a positive trend is a very negative one. So yeah, that's quite cause for concern. And then I was thinking, well, then what actually do we do when it comes to climate resilience and open science? And I thought, well, actually, I think open science is actually probably even one of the most important vehicles for climate resilience. When I started doing data management, which was 6 years ago, so it's not that long ago, it was just upcoming, and people were thinking about how great it would be to open up all data and not just our research articles. And so my takeaway for this slide, or at least my thoughts for this slide would be, where would we be if we had not opened up our research data or our articles? Would we be where we are today? And I guess one of the most brilliant things that I learned today was the presentation by Jan, because he just showed how incredibly great and wonderful open data can be and what it can achieve for us. So I wanted to use my 3 minutes that I have left for a shout out to all our wonderful research supporters at our university. It is quite complex to arrange open science and open data, so we're constantly working on it, but I'm very proud that there are a lot of initiatives going on at our university nonetheless. I've listed only 3 because there's many more, but just a lack of time. So we have our Open Science Community Rotterdam, who are actively trying to promote open science practices as well. Our library has an open access team where we have people who promote open access and help researchers actually educate them about what it is and what to do. And recently we also started our open data team, which is about fostering our data publication practices for our researchers, not just to our own institutional data repository, but also elsewhere. So what we specifically do, we help our researchers make their data more fair. We do a lot of outreach and awareness, presentations, learning materials, workshops, because I was thinking, I think most researchers by now know the importance of open science and open data. But then when it comes to actually doing it, there is quite a few steps to be made. And I guess this is one of the really important avenues where our library can support our researchers in helping getting more data out there. And in our case, we do that in a multidisciplinary way with, for example, our data stewards, privacy officers, legal, etc., etc. So it's quite complex, but a very interesting journey. So I just have 2 little examples of our, one of our own data repository, because I tried very hard to find a data set that actually had something to do with climate and climate resilience, and this kind of, it borders on the topic. So this is one of the researchers that we helped. Oh, I can't push 3 buttons at the same time and it's not working. There we go, thank you. And I have the next one. There. So this is one of our examples we have of our for our management and researchers. So we help them try to get a good metadata to go with that data. Now, obviously, there's a lot of steps we still can improve, but at least it's a start to go out there. And I found this one as well. This is one of our researchers as well. He posted a data set of studies on water. And I probably would have never known these studies existed if it wasn't for the entry in our data repository or linking that to the library where they are held. So all in all, I think we play an awesome and wonderful role as research supporters. And it ain't much, but it is honest work. So I'm very proud to be here. And I'm very proud of all our supporters. Thank you.
Thank you, that was great. Ain't much, yeah. I think it's a lot. And thank you for showcasing your data repository. Another big plug for Fixer, our data repository where I work. So thank you, Ninke. And we are going to move on to the questions and we have received quite a few questions on the questions and answers. We are going to move, the other panelists are going to come and sit up with us. So just give us a couple of minutes for that. And we have put up in here the opening question for everybody. What does collaboration look like for the effort or project that you have described? And what collaborations are most important in your work? And we're going to start with Ellen Tice with the opening question. Ellen, what does collaboration look like?
Yes, thank you very much. I think the other panelists would be much better to answer that. Is it again what one? Yep. Yes, we don't have a lot of time, and I think the other panelists will probably be able to answer that much better because I've sort of given a broad overview. So I would say I think one of the areas of collaboration that I would think of that I can, based on what I had said, to sit simply in terms of how we can collaborate in terms of providing access. Or the access that's already available to many of the open access resources on climate change in the various institutions. The example that we, of course, got this morning in terms of where you're looking at actually at the repository of the world, and that there are countries collaborating in that. So that is certainly one that I would think, from what I have said, that I think we can continue to collaborate on.
Thank you. Claire, same question for you, please.
Yeah, I think speaking from the international level, we see really collaboration is at the heart of a lot of these projects between different, between researchers, between library professionals, between community. But I would add, I think it's very important to be reaching out outside of the library, especially to decision makers, at the level that makes sense to you. So if that is decision makers within the institution that are funding these different projects, if it is local, city, municipal policymakers or national policymakers, that collaboration, that outreach, saying this is what we're doing, this is really important work, we're helping you, let's work together. Because I think in my experience, they've been really, really keen and really excited about these projects, but themselves aren't finding them. So collaboration with decision makers at the level that makes sense is what I would say.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, if I may add, it's actually very related to my current research. The key terms is collaboration, but I want to highlight that what we are doing is interprofessional collaborations. It means that two or more professionals work together. And if I can also highlight the key terms of open science actors that is recommended by UNESCO, it mentioned so many professions inside that can work together to also support open science. And the work that we need to focus on is at least on the outcome or impact of our work, and I think we can just enjoy the process during working together. That's all. Thank you.
Wow, so many clever things said, and so true. I think that if we collaborate, we could actually develop tools to empower the citizens and to empower the scientists to actually make a difference. And I think that citizen science is a great tool for that, and I could talk for hours about it, but I actually think that the collaboration will secure empowerment. We could actually make things happen.
Thank you. Okay.
Wait, put you in place.
No, it's, okay. So I would say that librarians can help to save our planet, by the way. A couple of ideas. Firstly, I think we should promote more data literacy and information literacy topics because it's quite important, and I think librarians are able to deliver a high quality education in these fields. This is number one. And number two, I think, I think I can say that we should build stronger ties with law enforcement because we can provide them the information support. Because, you know, I do not know how in your country, but in my country, the Czech Republic, I think we try to build strong relations with law enforcement. Me personally, for example, I do trainings for law enforcement regarding open source intelligence, and it's quite with a great effect, I think. So two remarks on this. Thank you very much.
Well, collaboration for us I think very much focuses on offering the right support at the right time and in just the right amount. Providing the information that researchers need, not too much, not too little. So for them, it is clear what is expected for them, what to do and how to do it.
That's fantastic. It's a key role. So thank you, all of you. We're going to move on to the questions from the audience. We had quite a few questions, and I'm going to invite our colleague Blessy Maguire. She is from the Evidence for Global and Disaster Health Committee, and she's been monitoring the questions. Over to you, Blessy.
Thank you, Maria. So we've got a couple of questions. The first one I think will go to Claire. It says there are emerging fields in digital humanities called environmental humanities and medical humanities. How do you see their role in driving climate actions? There are emerging fields in digital humanities called environmental humanities and medical humanities. How do you see their role in driving climate actions?
Yes, that's a great question. And I think there are a lot of different roles for at different levels. So in driving climate action, that's why I've been really embracing this topic of climate empowerment, because it can be really inclusive in different aspects of the library profession, but in emerging subjects and emerging topics, there is, I think, a lot of work to be done in terms of translating more scientific information and research into something that can be widely understood by different people, be it your users, be it politicians, be it whoever you're reaching out to, because it's wonderful to have these data sets. It's wonderful to have this information, but being able to synthesize it and pull meaning from it, and then use that to empower people to take action or change minds, like that. There is a need for that sort of to be an information broker in a way. So I could see a role there in terms of translation. I could also see a role in terms of exchange between institutions that are working in these spaces. I think there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning that can be done, and especially in more innovative or new approaches. I think libraries and the connections that libraries make between one another can help provide opportunities to exchange good practice, exchange outcomes. And so I think I would encourage, if you, in whatever area you're working in, to look at these different elements of climate empowerment and think, okay, what does this mean to me? What makes sense in the work that I'm doing to connect it with others? So,
Thank you so much, Claire. We also have a question that's going to Ms. Peterson. How do you communicate the message of hope to drive actions when what is happening around generally is all doom and gloom?
Sorry, could I get that again? Sorry.
How do we communicate the message of hope?
Hope.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for that question. It's a good one. Actually, I think I try to focus a lot of my work about really young people. I'm old. So I'm old, I'm skeptical, I'm annoyed constantly. But young people, they don't seem to die. So they're just born with hope and they will live forever. It's actually not that big a problem. What they really want, they want to act, they want to do something, and they want to do it today. So normally I wouldn't be dressed like this. I would have my raincoat on, I would have Wellingtons on, I would be out in a field during night times with a lot of young people looking up at the stars and documented light pollution. And just enabling them to act and to make data and to have a voice is actually more important. They're quite hopeful. They actually think we're going to make it.
Fantastic. So involve the youth there. All right, then there's a question for the gentleman. They say that your presentation was very excellent in the research that you're doing. But there's a question that says now, do you know the impact of environmental legislation, such as the outlawing of plastic bags in countries such as Rwanda and Kenya, or other efforts such as education programs aimed at the public?
Let's say I did this presentation with a global perspective, but what I know from the documentation and technical reports and white papers or great literature, I think open data will affect the decision making and policy making. I set example with the Global Plastic Watch, which is the initiative using European Space Agency data. And now it's used for example, for issuing anti-dumping policies and laws in countries. I do not know specifically the examples from Africa, but I believe and I know that Africa is really, really strong now with open data initiatives. By the way, it was mentioned also in Ms. Thai's presentation. And I know many great open data sets coming from Africa. And regarding the education, I think it should be a solid part of many syllabuses, not only library and information science, but it should be, I believe, in elementary schools as programs, because we need to start at the very beginning of education of our children. It's not only about reading literacy, it's about data literacy too, and information literacy. So, but still, to conclude, we librarians have the power to change the things. That's the thing, because we have data on our side and we have knowledge. So that's my answer.
Fantastic, thank you. And to Ellen, please share any examples or details of your institution's support towards library efforts to continue with open science.
Okay, yes, I thought it was probably going to be on the climate change. I had one or two things prepared on that, but yes, I thought it would focus perhaps more a little bit on the climate change topic. However, in terms of the institutions and particularly the library and open science, I think we're just getting stronger in that. The institution, I would say, is probably the library at Stellenbosch University, a leader in this for a number of years in terms of the repositories that we have established. And as I've indicated also earlier on, the same goes for our open data repository that we have established, and then also the open access journal platform, where we host around 25 journals, 26 and 21 of those are very active. One of those that I do hope to bring on board is actually in collaboration with the School for Climate Studies. I think it's the first School of Climate Studies. It's the same level as a faculty that has been established at the university, where they really approach climate challenges holistically. And as I said, one of the things that I know that they're working on is to also develop and publish an open access journal. We also collaborated with them, for example, with a photographic exhibition in the library. We heard also examples of that, how libraries can contribute in that area. And then there's also, again, in terms of open science, our main focus is really to make the university's research more visible. And we can see the progress because our repositories are used from all around the world, basically, outside Africa. And of course, we also work and help and also support other institutions. So we make sure that we're up to date, upgrading the software. We recently, in June, hosted at Stellenbosch University, the Open Repositories Conference. We had a number of workshops where we actually trained, and we made sure that we probably had quite a number of African countries. So it's about developing the skills also, and providing support for other libraries as well in order to do that. I just want to say one other thing that I would like to add that I think has come up from the other presentations also in terms of open science, and maybe we need to actually name it that. Of course, we know we all have developed lots of LibGuides, and we do have LibGuides on various aspects, on open access publishing, digital literacy, information literacy, and so on. But I think I haven't seen yet maybe LibGuides or training guides specifically, and maybe linked to this particular topic that I think libraries can develop on this. And then, of course, maybe we should have specific LibGuides on open science and make that much more broader than what we currently have. So these are things that we have in place. As I say, we continue to build on those resources and tools that we've made available.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for those examples from Stellenbosch University. Now, maybe to our other two panelists, you could share this question. It says, whilst least developed countries, whilst least developed and developing countries will benefit from access to the science and insights from the developed world, conversely, the developed world will benefit from a deeper understanding of traditional knowledge, in particular in living in harmony with the environment, and the lessons learned in regards with resilience and adaptability. How do we facilitate the exchange of knowledge in both directions?
Well, that's a difficult question, but yeah, if I may say, with open data, we can focus on collaborations to make sure that the data that we have can be analyzed and then be the evidence or database policy for references for our policy makers and stakeholders. So that's why most of the outputs of libraries focus on research articles and also research reports, right? So data can have a more detailed and also evidence-based one for that. Yeah. Do you want to add?
Okay. Any other insights? Please go ahead.
Can you rephrase or summarize the question?
Okay, let me rephrase. So whilst there is a lot of data and information coming from the developed world, from the global north, there's also a lot that the global north can learn from the global south, especially around the understanding, a deeper understanding of traditional knowledge. And an example was given, how to live in harmony with the environment. So how do we facilitate an exchange of knowledge from both the global south and the global north?
That is indeed a really interesting question, and completely out of my area of expertise. But I guess when it comes to collaboration, from our perspective, if we can support our researchers to open up and to share as much as possible, that in itself already fosters collaboration and learning, because it provides others the opportunity to become aware of what is out there, what has been done. And personally, we do not connect researchers to one another, but researchers connect themselves to others by sharing their data and their outputs.
Clay, please go ahead.
I think that's a really interesting question. And part of my work at IFLA is more culture-based and cultural heritage. And IFLA is on the Global Steering Committee of the Climate Heritage Network. And one of the goals is to incorporate culture not only as something that is in danger, but something that can provide solutions. So I think, you know, we're talking about data in a very specific and kind of quantitative way, but we may need to widen our understanding of what climate data is. For example, those historic maps, historic documents can be climate data. But I think it's important to note in that as well, we're talking about openness, we're talking about open access. There are varied beliefs around, can all data be open? And I'm especially noting Indigenous data, where there is a consideration. I mean, I think we go in with a lot of good intention of saying, let's democratize data, let's have it open, but Indigenous communities have the right to their data and the sovereignty on their data and the right to use it in a way that they control the way the material is used to benefit the community. So I think when we're talking about traditional knowledge, there are a lot of solutions, but it must be community-led. And that idea of openness is going to be something that needs to be a conversation.
So true. All right, and then the last question, how can we as librarians be helped to advance our education to the level of you, the panelists? So any librarian takers or those working directly with the library?
I don't have a PhD.
Well, tough question too. Thank you very much. What I can say that we need to change our educational system globally. I think time is up, unfortunately, because our world changed in fall 22 when OpenAI issued their tools publicly for public use. And I believe that in 1 year, the world will be again changed. We will face enormous amount of new challenges regarding working with a huge amount of data, but with a huge amount of AI initiatives. And if we won't be prepared for this, we will lose as human beings. And I think we still have the power to change the education. We still have the power to improve critical thinking level of all people who want to be educated and who want to be part of intellectual capacity of this world. And the second point is we have to work with intellectual property, because if we won't work with intellectual property, if we don't protect our intellectual outputs, and if we stop our innovation activities, again we will be in deep mess. So I think it's a little bit general answer, but still it's hidden, that we need to work with the data and information in a little bit different way that we are getting used to. So let's change our educational systems across the world.
Thank you. Adapt and change. Thank you so much, panelists. These are the questions that we had. So I'll hand over back to our facilitator, Maria.
Thank you. So we now have one closing question. The closing question is for all panelists, and is in 30 seconds, what would you like to see happen within the next 1 to 3 years? It's a quick answer sort of question, okay? What would you like to see happen within the next 1 to 3 years, Ellen, starting with you?
Well, I'm listening this morning and hearing how we have to, what librarians need to do. I think I'm going to ask maybe the group as well as IFLA, maybe we, in order to inform us, set up a YouTube channel with live, was that we have data research and tell us that librarians can go in and actually just inform them about what's happening and sharing all the stories and research of what libraries, the best practices, and do that. So a YouTube channel that we can put on various platforms. That's what I ask IFLA to do.
Thank you.
I didn't realize I was going to get an assignment with your response. Very quickly, I would like to see that this work in libraries is sustainable. And we're talking about environmental sustainability, but I mean sustainability of our engagement in these topics. It's not enough to have people, librarians, doing this work in addition to their day job. It's not enough to have a short-term project. I would like to see library engagement in climate action being integrated into the activities of the library, and beyond that, integrated into your nation or your subnational plans for addressing climate in a way where the government, the powers that be, the budget holders are seeing the impact, the real impact libraries are having, and integrating that into their plans and supporting it as such. So I would say integration beyond the library and sustainable support.
Well, because I'm part of Emerging International Voices from IFLA, I hope that librarians with their own interests and also backgrounds can be the advocates in their field, their own field. It can be like university librarians, school librarians, etc. And they can actively deliver their voices. That's all. Thank
you. I would say fair research services. As in, our researchers need to be aware of what services that we offer. They need to be able to find them, because they're not always very well findable. They need to be able to access them, and not just access, but the right ones as well. I think all research support should be interoperable, that's a difficult word, as in seamless transition between different advices from different experts. Of course, the applicability part here is that advice from one expert needs to be able to apply to research, but it also needs to be in line with advice from other experts. So seamless transition in that. And reusability in the sense that a researcher has enough knowledge and skills to actually be able to apply those advices themselves.
I would like to think that librarians and libraries would embrace the paradigm shift happening right now and would engage themselves into science and the democracy processes in this community and think slightly outside of the box of just facilitating culture initiatives. Yeah, because they can really make change.
Thank you. I think less war, less fear, and greater focus on education. That's it.
Thank you. Very, very nice. Very nice from all of you. And I'm very fitting for the last words. Yeah, thank you very much. So we have come to the end of the webinar. I just want to tell us how you can contact us. You can email the group. We have an email address that is on your screen, Evidence for Global and Disaster Health Team @gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at IFLA Evidence for Global and Disaster Health. Please watch and promote this recording with others. The recording will be available next week along with the presentations. All the presentations, including Ellen's, will be available on the slides on the program website. And we will have more programs. We will have more webinars throughout the year. So we look forward to seeing you there. And finally, just to say thank you. Thank you, first of all, obviously, to all the panelists for being here. Thank you to you watching from home, wherever you are, whether you're watching live or you are watching the recording. A special thank you to our host, Erasmus University Library. They have been brilliant, helping us organize everything. They have provided all the technical equipment and the venue and lovely refreshments, and we are very comfortable here, but they also have done amazing work throughout the Congress. There is library visits going on right now, going into the library here, and they've been fantastic hosts for the Congress, for IFLA Congress. And also would like to say thank you to my colleagues, Emma, the outgoing convener, who has been instrumental in organizing this event, Margaret, the incoming convener, who has supported us today fantastically with all the changing the presentations, Blessing Maguire, who has been responsible for the questions from the audience, and the whole committee who has been supporting everything. So we are now 5 minutes before the time, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes of your life back, and we are happy to close. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.